What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of the Dolphins In Depth podcast. I'm Daniel
Last
Oyefusi.
one. The last one of the season.
For the 2022 season. Yes.
Yeah. Anyway, I ain't gonna keep going. They have all gone home, man. What do we got to talk about?
Hey, they going home, but we're not going home. I'm Daniel Oyefusi.
No.
That is David Neal. Thanks so much for tuning in. A quick reminder before we start, make sure to subscribe to the Miami Herald YouTube page, like, share, comment, all that good stuff, as well as subscribe to the Miami Herald. As David alluded to in the intro, the Dolphin season, the ups and downs, the fun, the not so fun has come to an end. The Dolphins, the first playoff game in 6 years, they were eliminated from the postseason by the Buffalo Bills, 34-31, a hard-fought game as double-digit underdogs. They gave the Bills a run for their money and even held the lead for a little bit in the third quarter, but ultimately the division rival comes on top, advances to the postseason, while the Dolphins start to transition into the offseason. We got a lot to talk about as we wrap up, conclude this 2022 season, put a bow on it, put our thoughts on what we saw over the past couple months, as well as look ahead to the offseason, which is low-key going to be a juicy, interesting one. But I want to start, like I said, with really putting our final thoughts on it. We all saw the game. The Dolphins with their third-string quarterback, seventh-round pick quarterback Skylar Thompson, fall behind by 17 early, but the defense and special teams get them back in, give them a short lead in the third quarter. The Bills come back on top. The Dolphins had the ball late with the opportunity to either tie the game or go in for a go-ahead score, but some play clock issues that were prevalent the entire game, entire season, they pop up again. Dolphins can't stop the clock, can't stop the play clock, get a delay of game penalty, and then ultimately Thompson's pass to tight end Mike Gesicki is incomplete. And the Bills, finish out that game at Hard Rock Stadium. And we spoke to general manager Chris Grier and head coach Mike McDaniel on Monday, where we asked them an assortment of questions about the season. They're obviously the first year under Mike McDaniel in this McDaniel era, as well as kind of looking ahead to the offseason. And I think that there were two questions that really stood out to me and two answers that really stood out to me from Chris Grier. The first being, was this a successful season? And he said yes. I mean, it was a successful season, but we're not satisfied. The second that really stood out to me was the final question that he got, which was, is a 9-9 record, counting the wild card round loss, is a 9-9 record a fair reflection of the season? And that question actually required a little bit of thought from Chris Grier. It was right as he was getting up to leave, and he kind of thought about it. And he said, hey, I started off working with Bill Parcells, who says you are what your record it says. We had a lot of injuries, but at the end of the day, we made the playoffs. We had an opportunity to beat one of the best football teams in the NFL on the road, and we came up short. So it kind of is what it is, and that's really where I want to start. Another
Parcellsism.
Yeah, exactly. And when I thought about that, and then I thought about how I feel about the season and how Dolphins fans should feel about the season, I tend to agree with Chris Grier. This team made a series of moves last offseason because they thought that they were underachieving, underproducing, not where they were, not where they should be, as it relates to kind of that rebuild and that they started in 2019. And I think that every NFL team that comes short of the ultimate goal, which is getting to and winning the Super Bowl, they all have this feeling of what if this happened? What if that happened? But when I look at the Dolphins season, I think about that so much. I mean, I thought about that in the hours after the game on Monday. I'm thinking about it right now. Mike McDaniel talked about a lot of missed opportunities against the Bills, and there was one missed opportunity that he wouldn't acknowledge, but that I brought up to him, and he wouldn't acknowledge, but I will acknowledge it, and that's the absence of Tua Tagovailoa, who obviously missed that game because of his second concussion this season, diagnosed concussion this season. When you look at a 3-point loss with, again, your third string, 7th round rookie quarterback, and you consider the fact that this was a division rival that you played twice, and in both games, the margin of victory was, 3 points or fewer. It's really hard to think, what if Tua wasn't there? And again, there's a lot of injuries. I mean, the Dolphins had a lot of injuries. The Bills had a lot of injuries. Every single team has a lot of injuries. But I almost think that, like, in a sense, like, this season was defined by when Tua was in the lineup and when Tua was not in the lineup. They went 1-4 in games when he didn't play, and I believe they were 8-5 when he did play. Obviously, they had that losing streak toward the end of the season. But I think that, again, we really saw the difference in this offense when Tua is in the lineup and when Tua is not. I mean, Skylar, for all, he battled out there. He fought, he tried, he was trying to make plays. But it was clear that, this is a completely different offense. This is a completely different team when Tua is out there. I think that the expectation is that, the arrow is pointing up. They have a solid core of players and veterans that they can build around. They're gonna have to figure out some cap space and make some moves and whatnot. And the expectation is like, all right, they're just going to be better next season. But the NFL doesn't work like that. Every season is independent of itself. Every season has a lot of different bounces. Maybe the Dolphins are, have better injury luck next year. Maybe they have worse injury luck. I mean, we don't know. A lot of stuff can happen between now and when the games start to be played again next season, and even throughout the course of the season, as we witnessed, for the past couple months. So this wasn't a perfect team by any means. They were a very flawed team, but every team has flaws. But still, again, the last really, picture of the Dolphins is, your 7th round pick quarterback, trying to lead you on a game-winning drive. I can't help but think if Tua was available for one game, for that game, for a couple other games during the season, are we kind of looking at this season a lot differently? I mean, that's how I guess a lot of people look at their seasons at the end of the day. What could have been. But it was a fun season. But still, I mean, there's still kind of a piece that's thinking like, what if?
Well, I mean, that's of course that's every team at the end of the season, and the Dolphins they had a chance, Sunday, because as we and I have said all season, this is not a great NFL this season. There's no great teams, and the Bills might be the best team in the AFC, but boy, they're pretty darn sloppy there. And it was exactly the kind of game that you can produce an upset. It was a lot of sloppy play, a lot of drop passes. Dolphins had guys, Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, I think, dropped a total of 3 passes that they normally never drop. I mean, we're talking right in their hands. The Bills blew some big plays on drops that precede, like one of them that preceded the Xavier Howard interception. I think that kind of turned the game around.
Yeah.
And one thing we should also say, the Dolphins were in there battling not only with a rookie quarterback, but with a rookie head coach. And that definitely showed up on Sunday.
No, for sure.
And the whole process of, the not getting the plays in smoothly, the using up the timeouts. There's nothing that drives me nuts more than coaches burning timeouts early in the half to avoid delay of game penalties. John Madden once said, look, never, you say he used to yell at players who would, call timeout to avoid delay of game penalties. It's like, so what? 5 yards. Okay, we'll live with that. But this is wait a minute. No, in a situation like the end of the game, that's where you want the timeout. Okay,
you're right. Because they could have used it on that 4th and 1.
Yeah, you want that timeout then. Who gives a damn what's happening back in the 3rd quarter? Your 3rd and 3 becomes a 3rd and 8. So what? Live with it. Don't burn that timeout there. Because you might, and probably, and if you look at that game, how that game was going, you probably will need that later, one way or the other. And guess what? The Dolphins sure as heck would have liked that timeout or they might have a couple of those timeouts, and they would have liked those right at that end when they couldn't figure out what the heck was going on or what down it was or whatever. Whatever shouldn't have been, should not have been happening at that point. They could have used a timeout to, calm everything down, figure out what was going on, and approach what was a 4th and 1, and maybe get the first down, and maybe who knows what happens then. But no, they I think also Mike McDaniel put Skylar Thompson in a bad position when they were up 28-24. They're back deep in their end, 3rd and long, everything's going your way, and he obviously dials up something that's calls up something that's designed to try to get the first down. And Skylar Thompson's a gamer. He's gonna try to he's gonna try to do what the play is designed to do, and it completely didn't work. And
that was really the turning point. That was really the turning point of that game.
Huge turning point. I mean, when that happened, that's when you went, that's what you didn't need. That's
because the offense, the defense was playing very well up to that point.
Right.
It had the strip sack that got them the lead, and you would have rather the Bills were going to get decent field position regardless, but you would have rather had them start maybe at the 50 midfield,
right,
rather than inside the near the red zone.
Right, and especially after a turnover where they're suddenly like, woo, all right, we're back in business on Blue Star, all right, and instead of just, okay, we got the punt, let's get out here, let's see if we can do something, because we haven't done anything this half. Totally different vibe when you saw it happen, saw it change there. And this kind of, as far as the season overall, it went about like we kind of talked about at the start. We were like, are they going to get into the playoffs? They're not. We weren't sure. 10-win team, maybe yes, maybe no. Maybe they get in, maybe they edge in. Well, what happened? They won 9 games, they edged in, and then they lost in the first round. Okay. That's about where we had. That's pretty much where we had them. And they didn't get there the way we thought they would.
Yeah.
But they are where we thought they were, what they would be as a team. They had injuries to the wrong people at the wrong time,
which was that was always going to be the big deciding factor.
Everybody's got injuries, but when they say, oh, everybody's got injuries, yeah, but
all injuries aren't created equal.
Right. That left guard versus your
the quarterback. It's a little different.
You're starting cornerback, when you get ready to face Joe Burrow, or he's going to try to play through injury. You're starting left tackle. These were key injuries, and the Dolphins didn't have the depth to overcome them, and not many teams do. But the losing streak, however, did happen. A good chunk of it happened with Tua at quarterback.
Yeah.
And the other thing, you have to go back to is the first ability is availability. And Tua, for whatever reason, he's had a variety of injuries. Some people just have bad injury luck, but now we're talking concussions, and that's a tough one. That's tough. Maybe after an off season, they will not be an issue again. But his track record is not one of, showing up and suiting up, 17 games plus the playoffs, which is what you kind of want your quarterback to do if you're talking about the Super Bowl. And which is what way everybody should be. Most teams, are talking about. It's either building toward a Super Bowl or being a Super Bowl team. I think the Bills, Kansas City, the Bengals, they all think their guys get, even though Joe Burrow's missed a lot of time 2 years ago, they all think, hey, going into the season, yeah, our guy, he's going to be there for 17 games unless we sit him, and however many playoff games we play. You think the Dolphins can say that with any confidence? With if they have any sense? No, of course not. That's a problem. That's a problem. It's so the question with Tua has gone from on the field to can he get on the field and stay on the field, and um the so I if they don't have questions about him, uh you know they have questions about him. They're just not tell if they're they don't want to tell everybody in the free world, but common sense says they have questions about him. And that's kind of that's one thing that sends you into the off season with a little bit of a the bitter aftertaste, kind of like the bad diet drinks. And the they defensively, are they do they look like they should be better than next year than they were this year? Yeah. There's a lot of yeah buts with this team. Like it looks like it should, everything should be a little bit be better, and you know that we should be looking at a better team this next year that maybe contends for the AFC East, and it looks like what they were looking like at 8-3, and but that's it's not a definitive where you go, okay, yeah, they're definitely going to be that. It's maybe. And I think Mike McDaniel would be a better coach. He will be a better coach. He there were times this year he showed his rookiness, and that's what that happens with every single head coach, with every single first year head coach. No matter what type of team you are handed, you will show your rookiness at some point. And a few times it hasn't mattered. The team's been good enough to overcome that, but that's not this team, and it's not most teams. I think Mike McDaniel will, if he's honest with himself, he'll learn from things this season, and he'll come back a better coach. But this is still a team very much a work in progress, and first thing they got to figure out is who's going to be the backup quarterback next year. Because what you think you're going to get again? How can you think you're going to get Tua or seven? No, I don't think they thought they were going to get Tua over 17 games this season, and they didn't. So, how can you think you're going to get it next season when you got concussion issues and any other issues there might be.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely was to your earlier point. It definitely was a young team. They brought in some vets like Teron Armstead and Tyreek Hill and Melvin Ingram, but this was a very young team. I believe close to a third of the roster made their playoff debuts last Sunday, and it was like you said, a first year coach and Mike McDaniel. You definitely saw the strides, most specifically with Tua in the offense. But they're definitely, and they definitely took a positive step forward. I mean, the postseason appearance speaks to that completely.
And they also, I think they showed on Sunday, they looked like a first year playoff team. They looked like they weren't. I don't want to say they weren't. Yeah,
they weren't buttoned up. They weren't buttoned up.
They weren't ready for that level of how the level of play really does rise. The intensity does rise. Everything rises up. It would happen like we talked about last week. You get caught in that wind tunnel, and suddenly by the time you're out of the wind tunnel, you're down
17-0,
17-0, and you're like, oh, bleep, let me let's just hang on for dear life. and hope you don't get blown out, halfway to Boston. And but they, to their credit, hung in there. They let Buffalo go. Buffalo, did what Buffalo can do, and they got back in the game, and that was uh, all credit to them. That's a lot of heart as a team, and they. I think if you played that game again, this next week, I'm not saying the Dolphins will win it, but I don't think it's that blitz shock out of nowhere that very clearly happened. And next year, I think you're going to have a lot of people much more used to, if they get back to the playoffs, you're going to have a lot of people much more used to the playoff atmosphere, the playoff level of play, the playoff intensity, the you know, uh, just the whole thing. And so, that's they're where we thought they'd be.
Yeah, like I said, positive steps forward. The arrow's definitely pointed up, and expectations have definitely been raised in Miami. So we'll see where they go from here. We're gonna take a short break, but when we come back on the other side of things, we're gonna get into some comments from Mike McDaniel and Chris Greer's end of season news conference, as well as give our thoughts on what the Dolphins should prioritize in the offseason now that they've reached that point. So stay locked with us, and we'll be back soon. What's going on, everybody? Still here on the Dolphins In Depth podcast, talking all things Dolphins with David Neal. And it's that time, we gotta slowly transition into the offseason, which sets up to be a fairly interesting one for the Dolphins. As I said before, Mike McDaniel and Chris Greer had their end of season news conference on Monday in Miami Gardens at the Baptist Health Training Complex. There was a lot of interesting stuff to come out of that roughly 25 minute sit down with the two big decision makers of the franchise. I think over the weekend and into Monday, I think the biggest news really was kind of an update on Tua, his standing with the franchise, his future, as well as kind of the injury concerns around him. So early Sunday, ESPN reported that Tua is expected to return as the team's starting quarterback in 2023 for his fourth season in Miami. Later that day after the game, Mike McDaniel was asked about it, and he all but confirmed it. He said, "He's our leader. I'd be a fool not to embrace him when he comes back. I made so many strides with him. I look forward to continuing that." I asked Chris Greer about that early in Monday's news conference, and he once again reiterated what Mike said. I specifically asked him about the fifth-year option for Tua and a potential long-term deal, because Tua, now that he's reached the conclusion of his third season, he's eligible for a long-term deal, as are his draft mates Joe Burrow and Justin Herbert. The Dolphins also have until May 1 to exercise the fifth-year option for Tua, which would essentially ensure a fifth year of that rookie contract. It would extend it through the 2024 season, and that fifth year would include a significant pay raise up to $22 million fully guaranteed. That's a lot of money, but in the world and the landscape of QB contracts now, it's kind of pennies. It's kind of a bargain. If you're getting good quarterback play compared to some of the biggest deals. Aaron Rodgers just signed a deal for $50 million. Russell Wilson, Kyler Murray just signed deals close to $50 million. So we talked about earlier the big question of if Tua can stay healthy. If he can't stay healthy, and we see the type of play that we saw this past season, league's highest rated passer, 25 touchdowns, one of the most efficient quarterbacks in the NFL. If they can get that play over the next two seasons, that is a bargain. That is a steal. Chris Greer, as expected, didn't give definitive. He didn't unveil his plans. He said everything was on the table in terms of the fifth-year option, a long-term deal. But what was really, really interesting from that presser is he took a lot of questions about the concussion concerns and Tua's two diagnosed concussions this season. And he said, quote, "The team has no concerns about that." He said that the team had received consultation from their doctors, consultation from doctors through the NFL Players Association that said that he's not prone, even after two diagnosed concussions this season, he's not more prone to or susceptible to sustaining a concussion as anyone else. He also said that, and he and Mike McDaniel also said that the helmet that he's wearing is one of the highest rated in terms of safety, but they're also going to work with him because, as we said before, it seems like he's been the way these concussions have been came about have been in similar ways with him hitting the back of his head. All of that is to say, have the Dolphins made the right decision, or what should they do with Tua? Because I've kind of gone back and forth about this. Where first, I'll start with the concussion statement that they made, that they don't believe it's going to be a concern going forward, and they were told that he's not more susceptible to sustaining concussions than anyone else. I found that particularly interesting because we've talked several times over the past couple months about how there's a lot of gray area with concussions. I mean, there's a lot of people that are on both sides, and there's a lot more information about concussions that we had in the past decade and decade plus, but there's still a lot of gray area with that. I've talked to neurologists that have said that you are more prone to concussions if you sustain 2 or 3 in a certain time frame. I mean, there was information from, I believe, a neurological organization that said football players that do sustain concussions are 3 times more likely to sustain another one. If that is what those doctors are telling them, I can't dispute that because that's what they said. I'm just going off of the little research that is out there and the fact that there is a lot of gray area. This is a big risk. I mean, you talked about it a bit earlier. I mean, it's a big risk because, and I think that over the coming months, what they do with Tua's contract will tell a lot. We can get into this in later episodes and whatnot, but they're in a kind of a precarious cap situation right now. They only have about 40 guys signed up for next season, and they have to fill out that roster, but they're over the cap. So they gotta cut guys, they gotta restructure some contracts to have enough money to make signings and make impactful signings and fill out the roster. So I don't necessarily expect them to give Tua a big contract this year. But it'll be interesting to see if they exercise that 5th-year option and to keep him in Miami through the 2024 season. I think that if they don't exercise that contract, that would kind of send the message that, all right, we're kind of putting it on this final year, this 4th year, to show us that what happened last year wasn't just an anomaly, and that you can stay healthy. There are a lot of people that are a lot of fans and some people that are just out on Tua, and they're saying, hey, if we can't count on you to stay healthy, we can't give you that long-term deal. But I also kind of look at it the other way, and I'm like, well, who else are you going to bring in? I mean, you traded one of your first-round picks. They had to forfeit another one, the second first-round pick that they have in this upcoming draft because of the tampering scandal and the punishment for that. The Dolphins don't have a ready-made solution on the roster, and they really don't have the means to go out and get a productive starter who is going to. They might give them 17 games, which Tua hasn't been able to, but are they going to give them the level of production over this past season? They really don't have any clear replacements or options right now. I don't want to say they're stuck with him, but even if they wanted to make a change, they don't have the means to do it in this offseason, at least to my knowledge.
That sounds like they're stuck with him.
Well,
that's the definition of they're stuck with him.
Well, it depends on the perspective, and obviously Chris Greer won't tell us exactly what he's thinking. But if they were truthful that they have no concerns about it, then they're not stuck with them. If they're thinking in the back of their mind, and you said that they probably are, but if they're thinking, oh, can this guy really be available when we need him, and we need to get somebody else, they don't have the means to do that. The concussions, I'm gonna leave that in the hands of the concussion kind of part of it. I'm gonna leave that to the doctors. I'm not a doctor, so I'm only gonna say so much when it comes to that. If he's healthy, we saw it. This was a top offense, one of the best offenses in the NFL when he was healthy in the lineup. When he wasn't, they're one of the worst. I mean, there's no way around that.
Yep.
Do I think that Tua? I mean, I'm sure Tua will be cleared at some point. He'll be back in whether it's OTAs, training camp, start the season. He'll be there. Am I confident he's going to give the Dolphins 17 games, 17 regular season games? No, because the history says that's not going to happen. The history says that has not happened yet. But if Tua's in the lineup, am I confident that there's going to be high level football on offense and the Dolphins are going to be one of the better offenses in the NFL? I'm very confident of that. So it is going to be interesting. I mean, I think that if I'm kind of putting myself in Chris Greer's kind of seats, I mean, I exercise the 5th year option. I give it one more year to see how he does in terms of, staying healthy, availability, the level of play. I try to continue to build around him, build the defense up. And then, after that 4th season, I think it'll be very clear. Like, we've had a lot of questions about Tua. Like, is he a bust? Is he a starting quarterback? Can he be a great quarterback? I think that we've reached a point after the season where we know this is a legitimate starting quarterback and you can build around him. You can win because of him, not in spite of him. And I think that after his 4th season, whether it's after we see another year of him in this McDaniel scheme, this system, we see whether he can stay healthy or not, we'll know fully who Tua is. If he's a talented but injury-prone quarterback, I mean, we're going to know that after the 4th year. Is he a guy who's had some really bad breaks, but it can break out and stay healthy? I mean, we're going to see that in year 4. So Mike McDaniel, Chris Greer said that they expect him to be the quarterback in 2023. Sometimes sometimes that talk is lip service, but right now I'm anticipating he will be. And we'll see what happens in year 4. But if he's a starting quarterback in 2023, we'll go through that season, and I think that by then we'll know who he is, and I think that by then we'll know if he really, really is deserving of that long-term big contract by his play and availability.
Well, there's no question he's going to be the starting quarterback in 2023. The question is, how many games is he going to start? And to me, like I said earlier, I want to know who his backup's going to be, because he has not played 17 games. And the number of games he misses, might determine whether or not the Dolphins are in the playoffs or not, or
I mean,
if they're a 7th seed, or
that is, I was going to say that
3.
if Tua plays 1 or 2 extra games, maybe they're playing Jacksonville in the wild card round, and maybe they win that game.
Oh yeah,
even without Tua,
that's no guarantee. But yeah, it's maybe they're playing Jacksonville instead of Buffalo, which one sloppy team with a big arm quarterback with another sloppy team with a big arm quarterback going playing at home. But I mean, that's like I said, they can't not have questions about him. It's just common sense. They can't not have questions about him, and they can't automatically think we're going to give him, we're going to, take the 5th year. They are kind of stuck with him. They are kind of stuck with him because, as you point out, they don't have the means to, barring some blockbuster trade, they don't have the means to, bring in somebody, get a top 2 first or second round pick at quarterback. And you don't want to spend what draft picks you have remaining on on a quarterback that, I mean, you just better to build around this guy and cross your fingers, get a good backup, get your team better, hope your team gets better so they can survive the games that history says he's going to miss. And he should be better next year. He should be better in the system. He should have even more cohesiveness with his receivers. He should have more cohesiveness with Mike McDaniel. The only question again is for how many games. Is he going to play 17? Is he going to play 12? Play 10? And when he's not there, who's going to be there? I mean, is it going to be Skylar? Is it going to be Skylar Thompson? I mean, are they probably not going to bring back Teddy? Is Skylar Thompson going to be battling for the backup quarterback spot with someone else? And a better backup, a better number two, and does Skylar Thompson grow into the number two spot and give you more next year when he's not a when he's a second year guy, the seventh round pick, but he's played in a playoff game,
Yeah.
And it's a close playoff game, and when he's played in key games, important games that they needed to win, that were either win or else. He's played two of those already. That's pretty decent for a rookie season.
Yeah.
Does he wind up being the guy? And if he is the guy, can he be counted on? Can he be counted on when you can't count on Tua? Yeah. Again, I think that's the big roster question to me, is what happens with that backup position. And yeah, they're gonna have to do a little 3-card Monte with the salary cap to get around it,
Yeah.
in order to satisfy or stay under it, allegedly. Stay under it in that Denver late 90s way where you don't. But yeah, to sign the rest of the roster, I mean, they've and because they do have other needs that need to be satisfied. This is not a complete team, but it can be an improved team. But that it really does so much hinges on that one position, and where because suddenly your defense isn't on the field as long. They suddenly look a lot better.
Yeah.
Everything looks a lot better if you got a team if you got an offense that's giving you 28 to 30 points a game, and putting the fear of the big strike in the other team. And if you can get them to run, if they can actually get the run going and stay with the run a little bit,
Yeah.
which I think it's something as a Mike McDaniel might look back on this season and say, yeah, I maybe need to take a little heat off my quarterbacks and pound the rock a little bit, just to do it. So
Yeah.
yeah, they're not going to the concussion stuff. I know it very rarely goes away. The guys who get knocked around tend to suffer the concussions, or the guys who get knocked out, they tend to keep getting knocked out of games. It's usually not one or two times, and that's and that goes back a long way. We back when and up till today. It just so maybe there's not a medical reason. Maybe there's not a medical connection of, oh yeah, they're no more susceptible concussions, but history says, yeah, you get one, you get two, you get maybe three, and it's now it's like you're on the concussion like frequent flyer list, and you suddenly start getting 5 and 6, and later on down the road forget revealing to people that you don't remember certain halves of games. They let you play. That's not that's abnormal. That's not the norm now. But you know, so there have to be questions about Tua. As far as that, just like I said, just common sense. It's common sense. It's his personal history. It's overall NFL history, and quarterback history. History trend, whatever you want to call it. So, and but they have to. I think they have to build the team. You have to improve the team, but you also have to think in terms of, okay, what can we do to make sure that when this guy's out, we can win games, and not just win games 11-6 because the other team, you know, is dog meat on offense.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean the backup quarterback position is always important, because again you're one play away from being the starter. But definitely given to his injury history, that's a position that becomes a lot more paramount. I think that we even saw that with the signing of Teddy this past offseason, but obviously he had his own injury problems as well, and he wasn't able to be available. So I was gonna say Teddy is an unrestricted free agent, I believe. So it's gonna be interesting to see if they bring him back. It's this competition with Skyler, McDaniel and Greer were asked about that, but they didn't say whether Skyler was going to be given the opportunity to be the number 2 guy. But again, that is something that they have to factor into their equation when they kind of divvy out the cap space they're gonna have to free up. It will be interesting to see. Yeah.
Why wouldn't you give Skyler the opportunity to be number 2 guy? I mean,
I mean, I don't know. Maybe they don't think he's ready. I don't know. I mean,
but
obviously,
it also makes sense economically.
oh yeah, I think in a perfect world, and we said this before, I think in a perfect world, Skyler showed them enough to feel like, hey, okay, he without a doubt is number 2 guy. Would I just anoint him the number 2 guy? I don't think so. But maybe they think differently. Maybe they think that after an offseason of work and reps, he'll be ready for that role. We just
I'm not
don't
saying
know.
anoint, but I'm saying you better give him a serious look as your number 2 guy. Common sense says you do. Again, common sense says you do that. He's played in these games. He should improve, and you got to allow him to compete to be the number 2 guy. Unlike this year when he was competing to stay on the roster.
Yeah. No, I mean, he's definitely earned a spot. I mean, he wasn't perfect, but he fought hard. He showed improvement. Right. So he definitely, earned a spot on the roster. He deserved a spot on the roster. And now we see if he can kind of be that bona fide, legitimate number 2 option or number 2 guy. And it will be interesting to see overall in the next couple of days. We asked Mike about potential coaching staff changes. There's been a lot of speculation about what they're going to do on the defensive side with retaining a lot of guys from the Brian Flores regime. Mike McDaniel said, he's going to kind of give everybody some time to breathe, kind of really put this loss past them, and then really discuss the state of the team and come to those decisions, one way or another. So definitely in the next days, weeks, we should definitely be hearing some confirmation or receiving news on any possible changes. And of course, there's obviously the potential for some guys to depart the roster, depart the staff as well. Sorry, I already got confirmation that the quarterbacks coach, Darrell Bevel, who was very instrumental in that position room, he has been requested. Request to interview him has been submitted by the Washington Commanders, who are trying to fill their offensive coordinator spot. I'm sure, after a postseason appearance, a lot of other coaches may be under consideration for different jobs too. So, it's the end of the season, transition to the offseason, but there's still definitely going to be a lot of news. And this team, whether it's the roster or the coaching staff, is definitely going to be shaped starting, over the next couple of days or coming weeks. So we'll definitely be monitoring that, reporting that as it comes. Well, that brings us to the end of another edition of the Dolphins In Depth podcast. I want to thank you guys as always for tuning in. Reminder as always to subscribe to the Miami Herald YouTube page, like, share, comment. So we don't have
the Herald, man.
subscribe to the Herald. Subscribe to the Herald. So we don't have a Dolphins football game upcoming this weekend. So I can't say enjoy the game this weekend. But as always, we'll be back to discuss Dolphins football as news comes out and breaks. So you enjoy the rest. We will. We will.
Nobody said that. I need to renegotiate my own contract.
Everybody's working on contracts over. It's contract
Hey,
season, man. We gotta sign some new deals around here.
pay the man.
But as
Better
always,
have my money.
shout out to Rihanna. But as always, you guys take care. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.
Later.